Hello, everybody. Uh, to everyone who is watching the Roleplay Ukraine stream, it is a unique event indeed. Uh, Welcome, everybody. We will now have an interview with a very special guest with Mark Rein, Hagen, and we will introduce him in a moment. Before I do, I would like to remind everybody that we are also collecting donations for charity. Information will be on your screen and in the chat as well. We are fundraising specifically for medical supplies here in Ukraine, and we are doing so through the foundation Ray of Hope to have maximum transparency of where the funds go. So
Who is? I know this NGO personally. It's a valid NGO with very low organizational costs, so it's a good one.
thank you, Mark. So let's talk to you. Let's talk about you. I know you obviously as the original author of the Vampire the Masquerade role playing game. But
That makes me the author, right?
yes,
Or at
um,
least the creator. Actually, maybe not the author, but the creator.
the creator of Vampire the Masquerade role playing game. For those others who are watching who might not know you, can you say just a few words about yourself?
I love games.
A
I
few
love
words indeed.
storytelling. Um, since an early age, I knew that all I want to do with my life is to make and play games. And so far, I have succeeded, despite some forays into political consulting and other kinds of consulting, nonviolent protest around the world. And, but politics is kind of a game, right? And done right, people in politics treat it as a game, right? That's part of the problem of modern politics, that people treat it as this tribal thing of hatred when inside a democracy, a true democracy, I'm not talking about other forms of government, but inside a democracy, it should be seen as a game, like a sport, as something casual, as something, like you don't try to, destroy people who you beat. You just try to beat them. But anyway, I created Vampire Masquerade, The Rule of Darkness, Ars Magica, and my current project is Lostlorn, and I'm doing a whole new series of monster games called the Accursed series, starting with Fang Night, which is sort of a grim, dark vampire game set in a very perilous fantasy world. So I'm bringing the World of Darkness kind of to a darker fantasy place.
Wow, this is so much interesting stuff you packed in there. We'll dive into some of that as we go on the stream, as we go along the stream. And for those of you watching, my name is Nikita, aka Concordius, or just Concord for short, and I will be the host performing this interview today. Mark, we are very happy to have you on the stream. How are you doing in general?
Um, well, I live in Tbilisi, Georgia, which not everyone knows what that is, but anyway, we were invaded by Russia before Ukraine was, and I was actually running the PR shop for the country at that time. I used to work for Misha Saakashvili, the
Hmm.
president, and so I have a very firsthand awareness of what an invasion's like. But our invasion lasted 5 days, right? And yours is now more than a year. And but anyway, what happens in the Ukrainian counterattack this summer, this spring, whenever it happens, has a huge effect on Georgia. And this is a country I've come to love. My kids are half Georgian. I have 3 children. My wife is Georgian. And the future of them and everyone else I know and love in this country is completely determined by what happens to Ukraine. And that's why so many Georgians are fighting in Ukraine. And that's why,
Yes, indeed.
that's why so many people in Ukraine and Georgia are supporting Ukraine, because we know if Ukraine falls, if Ukraine fails, that we will be immediately ended as a country.
Yes, indeed. It is humbling and a little bit anxiety inducing to know that the results of the actions that my friends and the people I know and a lot of people here in Ukraine are doing will affect so much in the world, and including Georgia, where you live now with your family. But it is very heartwarming to hear about the support, and to know that a lot of people around the world are realizing at least the situation, and the and some are actually actively helping. This is heartwarming.
Yeah.
So um, I would like, if you're okay with this, to reminisce about the past a little bit, because I am personally a fan of Vampire the Masquerade game and the World of Darkness universe in general, and I've been running games in this universe for, I don't know, 17 years now, and a lot of our members of our community, of the role playing and tabletop role playing and live action role playing communities in Ukraine, at some point either played Vampire or some other World of Darkness game, or um, at least know about it because it had a huge following. So I wanted to ask you if you could just like say a few words on, if you could tell us a short story on how you came up with Vampire, and how did you manage to publish your first edition of the rules. And I'm also asking this because maybe there are young dungeon masters, storytellers, authors watching the stream, or maybe if we have a recording, we'll be watching recording to know how what you went through, so that they know that they can do something similar as well.
Huh. Well, I didn't used to say this, but I feel it's important to say now when I talk about it that we live in a different age.
Hmm.
And when I did it, gamers were all about someone being transgressive, about doing something a little bit naughty,
Hmm.
about doing breaking boundaries and changing the rules and sort of doing something that the powers that be would not like, right? And the powers that be back then were religious people. They controlled culture, at least in America, they did. They controlled, you know, film and TV. They could say, "Hey, you're not allowed to say these bad words." Like even music, they had the weird labels on records. Parental advisory.
Hmm.
And so there was this whole thirst for truth. Young people want to hear the truth. They want to hear something true. And today it's a very different. Like everyone's in different tribes, and each tribe, whether you're right or left, what has restrictions on what they think is acceptable. And so it's very hard to be transgressive, because then immediately you're going to come across either left or right. And I'm personally, my politics are left, but I think that in general politics, at least inside a democracy, are very foolish, because you're as soon as you say that you are something, then your mind is being controlled by that political faction, and you're not free to think for yourself. Like everyone should have their own opinions on abortion, death penalty, military, freedom, First Amendment in America, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, right? Like all these things, right? Like, and if you actually talk to someone, and I have friends who are both right and left, like everyone has radically different opinions than everyone else. If you get right down to it, yet as soon as you join a tribe, anyway. So today you cannot be transgressive anymore, right? You could not come out with a game like Vampire without pissing everyone off. And so that's why I'm doing that.
This is an interesting take, but I see where you're coming from. There
Like
is
I
definitely
plan
some
on with
truth
the new
behind that.
game pissing everyone off, like everyone. And fuck it, if everyone's pissed off, then they're pissed off. But I'm not doing it to piss them off. I'm doing it to just say something honest about the world. You know, like for instance, I don't want to make people who are upset about racism actually have to experience real world racism in my world, right? That would suck. Like, who wants to play a
Yeah.
fantasy world to deal with like people hating black people? That's horrible. So what we've done instead is we have the newcomers to the Lostborn or the pureborn who come from Earth, right? And they're all the different us people from Earth of all races. And then the original people are the metalborn who've been on Lostborn so long, they have kind of a metal tinge to their skin. And they have slightly pointed ears, which they're forced to cut off if they want to be, they
Ooh,
notch their ears. So we're playing a world in which there's full on racism, horrible, disgusting, terrible racism, but it's racism that does not exist in our world because in our world we don't have metalborn.
interesting. I like what you're doing there, and it feels like you are allowing people to play with, experience, and think about serious topics, but using examples that are completely made up from a completely made up world with very little chance of triggering real trauma that people had
I
before.
really do not want to have anyone suffer because of my art, but I do feel that art has to be transgressive. It has to push people. And so I'm trying to, and I hope people understand that we're trying to be transgressive, but in a way that is not trying to like trigger people. And, in no way would I ever want, like in my own life, I go way out of my way to make sure everyone around me is happy and satisfied and content. This is my personality. I want everyone to be happy, right? And then so I go way out of my way to do that. And in my art as well, I've always done that too. But I'm also a cheeky bastard who wants to provoke people and make them think. And so I'm trying to thread the needle here, and I just hope that I'm not canceled before I can finish this project.
Let's hope so. Someone in the comments is saying that this is punk, basically, as your art philosophy.
I grew up in the '70s. I came of age. For me, punk is and always will be, the ultimate thing, right? Like for me, punk is like the ultimate fuck you, and so yeah, I'm punk. And
Uh,
but for me, punk is intellectual, right? It's not like just a you know a it's not an instinct. It's like I believe that art has to be punk. It has to be outcast, right? Like you have to say something that's against whatever the powers that be are telling you to think, right? Because a human culture does not advance unless artists are saying something different. And so punk is the attitude that all artists, I think, have. True, all great artists do. And it's like, fuck you, I'm saying this. You don't like it? I don't fucking care. I'll starve. Right?
and I
And punk
guess
is that. I'll starve, but I'm saying this.
I guess then this is the reason why in the middle of in the beginning of the 90s, where the most you had are people playing heroes in shining armor, you came up with a game where you are a vampire, you are the monster.
Yeah, I mean, I knew I wanted something really dark. I didn't know what to do. And I remembered my friend, Jonathan Tweet, who ended up doing Dungeons and Dragons third edition. And he and I did our first game together, Ars Magica. He and I and my sister, Kristen, were at Lost Boys, opening night of Lost Boys. And we knew it was going to be a great movie for the trailer. And as we were walking out of the movie, Jonathan said, "You know what? It would be so cool to have a role playing game about vampires, but it'd be so boring if vampires are the only monsters you killed." And I said to him, "I bet there's a way to do it, and I'm going to figure that out. Not tonight, but mark my words, someday I will figure that out." And it stayed in my head, right? Like it stayed in my head, it stayed in my head. And 4 years later, on the way to Gen Con, which back then was still Milwaukee, love Milwaukee, as we're driving through Chicago, it came to me, through Gary, Indiana, actually. We weren't even in Chicago yet. Just saw these blast furnaces and these towers and this blighted area. And
Yeah.
it suddenly came to me, oh, yeah, like do a game about the modern world and how, I'm an environmentalist. I believe very strongly that, there's one world in this universe in which humans are perfectly adapted to living in, and that's Earth. We will and we can and we should go to other worlds, but this is our home world. This is our baby. We should protect it. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that we should be doing 1,000 times more than we are. We're fucking up this world. Horrible. And so vampires were that perfect metaphor that I want to get at as, my environmental self of like, it's the perfect metaphor of humans just fucking up what we are, don't shit where you eat, as a saying, right?
Yeah.
And vampires do that and humans do that.
I totally agree. I'm a big fan of space and space exploration, and I cheer every time I hear about a successful launch. And I'm a fan of a science fiction and especially space operas. But I agree with you totally that it in no way absolves us of the responsibility to keep our house in order, to keep our own
Yes,
Earth in
yes.
order.
And people often think that, oh, these space geeks. I'm a space geek too. I love all things space. My whole life, I've wanted to retire to space. I've wanted to live in space. I want to just go to space. But I'm an environmentalist too, and I believe 100% that no matter where we go in the universe, there'll only be one Earth, and there'll be only one place. Like it's just perfect as Earth. And so we have to preserve it. And in fact, we have to, at some point, we're going to have to save it because, an asteroid is going to land or something terrible. We have to turn Earth into a garden, basically. We can't keep it natural because at some point, somebody's going to try to destroy it. Eventually, the sun's going to expand. And we're going to have to move the Earth backwards. And I have no doubt that we will move it to a further out orbit. I completely believe that we'll do that.
This is interesting. Well, let's see if you're.
No doubt if we're around, at least. I mean, we may not be around, but if we're around, we'll move it. We'll move Earth's orbit.
The internet remembers everything, so this interview will be preserved in the internet, and one day in future maybe somebody will check your prediction. There is actually a question in the chat, a question from a person from Istanbul, Turkey. He is a neighbor of both Georgia and Ukraine across the Black Sea, and the question is, what would you change if you could create Vampire the Masquerade again?
I would use D20, but my version of it.
Really?
Yeah, here's the thing is that back in the 90s, everyone wanted to do their own game system. And even today, everyone in the indie game world, right? Wants
Hmm.
to do their own game system and show how cool and innovative they are
Hmm.
and do their own game system. And I love D10 and I want to show how cool D10 were. And I want to do a game of just D10, but that's foolish. Like what is the identity of role playing games? It's all these different dice, right? Why get rid of the coolest thing about role playing games, which is all these cool dice? So what I should
Indeed.
have done is what I'm doing with Lost Lorn and the what we call the T20. It's called Tail Spinner 20 because it uses 20-sided dice. Is
Hmm.
that you know what? It doesn't matter what dice you use, right? If you use the Fate dice with the D6, right, or Powered by the Apocalypse, or the D10s of Storyteller, or the D6s of FASA, right? It doesn't matter. It's all the same mechanics in the end. But people are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, and you can make a really cool narrative system based on that, and be and create something that everyone's familiar with. Like why change the dictionary? Why invent a new language? Why not just add to the existing language? So that's what I would have done. As I would have because I already had all my ideas on how to advance D&D, like right, like everyone did back then. But I had really good ideas. I should have put all my ideas in and made like the coolest version of it. Of course, no Thaco or any of that insane shit. But at least use a D20 and then polyhedrals for damage. That's it. Beyond
This is
that,
interesting.
you know, and that's fun. I don't know, but
Uh,
anyway, that's definitely what I've done. And also, um, I would have even less rules.
oh, I agree with you on that completely. And as for the using D20 for Vampire the Masquerade, there are people in the chat saying, "I'll show this interview to every VTM fan."
Yeah, I'm probably getting in trouble. But you know
But
what? The dice don't matter. Right? The
yeah,
dice don't, what matters is how you use the dice. It doesn't matter if you're using a whole bunch of D10s or we're using one D20. It really doesn't matter as long as you don't have math. And of course, the D20 system does have simple math addition. But even that, I'm like I was avoiding any math with Vampire, right? And then in hindsight, I was like, well, wait a minute, how did I learn to love math? And now I love math. I
interesting.
love math, and I was so bad at math as a kid, and it's because of D&D. Like I
Well,
learned all my math, everything from D&D, and I didn't have Khan Academy teaching me. I had my dad's math books. I was looking up. Oh wait, Dad, how does probability work? Like how does And I was learning all that shit. And so, and as anyone who's ever played my games knows, I'm determined to teach people words, right? Like if you play my games, you're going to learn a bunch of new words in English, you know,
yep,
like, like,
yep.
you know, like, I don't know, obfuscate,
Oh
like,
yes.
like no one ever knew obfuscate before I threw that out. But after you played my game, you sure did. Potence, you know that game.
This is an amazing concept that through playing role-playing games, board games, video games, we are learning new things. And
All
I can,
education should be based on games. Our
yes,
education
I will
system
quote
is
you on that.
bullshit. It's bullshit. The fact that they still teach with tests and boring shit and not with games is despicable and backwards and it's just It's so stupid. Like
Even
games
though
are
there is,
obviously the best way to teach anyone anything.
you are absolutely correct, and there is even serious research, scientific research backing this up, saying that for children, definitely, but even for adults, and actually, especially for adults, any additional training after a certain age becomes difficult and more difficult, but it becomes easier when they try something hands-on in the form of a simulation or a game. So gaming in education is
I
a
raised my
huge
kids
potential.
completely on gaming. Like my kids, I was worried about them not having enough ambition. So I have three kids, right? And so I bought two beautiful, beautiful hardbound, like just gorgeous art books, right? And I told them the first two of you who succeed in life, who do something truly great, you become famous or rich, or you get on TV, or you just do something that I think is truly wonderful. I'm going to give you the first one, the number one book, the second one, the number two book, and the third of you gets nothing. And my kids are obsessed with those books. My youngest daughter today, I keep on the top of my 10-foot tall bookshelf. And she figured out today how to climb the bookshelf and steal one of the books. And the other two kids found her and said, no, 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 you can't take that book. That is only for someone who wins. And my wife was going, why are you doing this to our children? You're just ruining their lives. You're hurting their minds. You're being so cruel. How can you do this? And I was like, you don't get it. And my kids are the ones who turned to her and said, you don't get it, Mom. It's a game. It's a game, Mom. It's a game. And my kids get it. They get it. It's a game.
Yeah,
And
it's a
if
game.
you teach your kids with games and you create fun games that aren't too annoying and aren't too rude, but are real and hardcore, a little bit hardcore, you're going to have great kids. You are. And that's what I do. I believe in games with all my heart. All my heart. I believe in stories. Games and stories are, this is why I'm in role playing, right? And I can't avoid it. Like I keep thinking, man, I'm wasting my talents in gaming because I should be in politics and actually changing something. And I have friends. I have a good friend who was head of staff for Biden. I could be
Really?
working. I could be working there. But I just want to be an artist. And in the end, I'm probably would be fired from any other job. So I'm stuck. I've been
You are.
fired.
We are enjoying the fruits of your artistic labor, at least very much. So this actually is a role play Ukraine stream and an online Discord convention. So I must ask you, um, because I know you have visited Ukraine before.
I love
So
Ukraine.
uh, what what have you seen in Ukraine? What are your impressions from visits here? If you could share something about that.
Um, you know, I've been all over the former Soviet Union, and I've seen many countries. In Ukraine, I know a lot of people when they think of Ukraine, they think, "Oh, it's this primitive backwater of the Soviet Union." And
Some
I
people say
always
so.
saw Ukraine as being like one of the coolest and most progressive and forward thinking and modern former Soviet countries. Like when I would fly from Tbilisi to Kiev, like it was always like, wow, these restaurants and this nightlife is so fantastic. Like,
Oh, they're good.
like I enjoyed it more than going to Amsterdam, and I love Amsterdam. I've loved Amsterdam since I was 23 years old. I love Amsterdam. I love Berlin. I love London. I love them. And Kiev was, in my mind, equal. It was just very, very cool. There's so much going on, so much energy and passion and art. Fantastic. And so people have to understand that when That's why I became so upset and angry when Ukraine was attacked and invaded. Is that this sacred place, this place that I loved so much, this place that I felt so connected to, and the people I loved, literally are being bombed, killed me, killed me, and so I just can't let it go. I can't.
Thank you.
That's why I'm wearing the glasses, by the way, so I can cry a little bit and no one can see.
It's heartwarming to hear your love for our country, and um, I it's I'm a little bit speechless when you describe even your part of the pain that you're feeling, and parts of the pain that obviously many of us here in Ukraine are feeling as well because of this whole war and this whole mess. Uh, we
And
are
it's
living.
so easy for people. Like I've been in wars. I remember when we had the war in Georgia and other wars I've been in, or been around, I shouldn't say names, but and people it's just so abstract to people who are not in the war, right? It's just like, oh, it's over there. It's that. They can just sort of be so intellectual. I don't know if we should do this or that. But it's just, oh, it's over there. And it's like, fuck you. Like, war is very real. It's almost like if there's been violence in your family, if someone in your family has been attacked or robbed or assaulted or raped, right? Like your family has changed. Doesn't have to be you, just someone in your family or even your friend group. There's been violence. You'll It'll change your life. And I think to understand war, you have to understand that on some level, that could be me. That could be my country. That could be us. And by the way, it very easily could. It's contagious. War is contagious. And once someone, wins, once a bad person wins a battle, they don't stop. They can't stop. Like people always ask, why did Hitler attack Russia? He had no choice. Dictators have to keep fighting, they have to keep attacking, or they lose power. If they just are satisfied and stay there, they're gonna lose power, right?
It is
So if
a sad
we
reality.
let Putin win, he has to keep attacking. He has to. And after Ukraine falls, it will be NATO for sure. Trust me, I'm Mr. Geopolitics, and I'm not
I
alone in this. The consensus, the overwhelming consensus in geopolitics is that Putin cannot stop. If he wins in Ukraine, which is still possible, sad to say, it's possible. He will not stop. He will keep attacking. He'll take Georgia. He'll take the Balkans, and he'll move on Poland.
Yeah, it is difficult, but yeah, I guess you are right in that it is reasonable to assume, and as you say, there's apparently a more or less a consensus among geopolitical experts that Putin just cannot stop. Not that he wants to or doesn't want to. It's his most reasonable course of action
He's
to
a
just to continue.
dictator. If you stop, then you're going to lose your impetus, right? Right, and so a dictator like Salazar of Portugal, right? He was never expansionist, so he never had to be expansionist, right? Pinochet of Chile was never expansionist, so he didn't have to be. But everything that Hitler said was expansionist. Everything that Putin's about is expansionist. Everything
Yep.
Xi in China is saying is expansionist. They have to be expansionist, otherwise they lose everything. It is a fact of life for a certain kind of dictator, and they can't avoid it.
And dangerous as it is, we have to keep this in mind, but we also still have hope that they will not win and that Ukraine will hold. And
Oh,
this is
I think
why,
Ukraine has a very strong chance of winning. Don't get me wrong. Russia has a chance of winning. Ukraine has a much better chance of winning. And honestly, like everyone else in Georgia, we we are literally on tender hooks waiting for the summer counterattack, right? Everything will be decided. And you know, I can't tell you. Like I was just with a bunch of former KGB generals and colonels, and we were toasting Ukraine the whole time today. Like I can't tell you. And two of them were just in Ukraine visiting the Georgian troops, and you know we are like everything about the future of democracy in Georgia and the Baltics and Poland, Moldova. It depends on Ukraine. It's amazing. People don't understand like how everything depends.
yes, and thank you
Everything
for.
depends on everything. So much. So much.
And this is a good reminder for me to remind people who are watching the stream to donate. The information should be in the chat soon. We and in the descriptions on the Discord server. We are collecting for medical supplies. We are doing this through the charity called Ray of Hope.
And even if you don't agree with the war, and you have every right not to, if your politics are that way, that's your right. But, medical, come on. Come on. You can't disagree with medical supplies. Even if you
Yes,
hate the British Empire, in the Crimea War, where Britain was in Crimea, can you? What was her? Florence Nightingale. Would you really not give her money? All she was doing is trying to save lives.
that's true. Yes, so that is the reason why we are not collecting donations on this stream specifically for the military. We are collecting donations specifically for medical supplies. So if you're watching this, please consider donating if you can. Mark, we still have a little bit of time left, and
Sure.
I wanted to ask you. What are you working on now, and would you like to speak about your current projects?
Yeah, I mentioned a little bit before at the top about Lost Lorn games. In fact, go to lostlorngames.com to sign up to be a playtester for Fang Night, which is basically the first game of the series, which is about playing monsters in a fantasy world. It's sort of like the world of darkness, but in a fantasy world. And I'm really happy with it. Like I'm able to do things I wasn't able to do with Vampire. It's way more creepy. It's way darker, believe it or not.
Really?
The bloodlines and the callings are definitely something that will appeal to people and also unnerve them. So I think that we've succeeded in making something pretty cool. And if you play test, you can join the team as well. We're always looking for team members, and we're looking for radical diversity. If you're not an American or not a European, or you're half European, or anyway, if you're some weird diversity person, we're into it. And I say that not to try to be like woke or anything. I'm saying that because I think it creates a better world, a better game to have a huge diversity of opinions. Like in our
I
team, we have somewhat people who are fundamentalists. We have a preacher. We have people who are very conservative. We have people who are trans and very liberal. And I think collected together a group of people who are wildly diverse, you can get at truths you couldn't get at otherwise. And that's really important, especially in these times where everyone hates each other. Um, and where we have to figure out how to keep Western civilization alive in the face of these forces that want to destroy us. And the most important thing is that we do keep civilization alive. Civilization has a price, and that is taxes, and that is also tolerance. You have to pay taxes to keep civilization alive, and you have to
Yep.
be tolerant of people. You have to be. Otherwise, civilization will dissolve, and it'll be terrible for us and everyone who comes after us. When civilization dies, it's terrible. Terrible.
I very much hope we don't see that, we don't witness that.
I I fear it, but I'm an optimist. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're brushing close to the sun. What's his name? The boy and his
Icarus,
father with their wings of feathers and wax.
Daedalus and Icarus.
Icarus, yes, Icarus. I think we're brushing too close to the sun right now, but I do believe that we will come out of this stronger than ever. We live in blessed times. We're so lucky. Like I always used to say when I was younger, I would never live in a time without penicillin. Right? Like, why would you want to live in a time before antibiotics? You would
I
not. That's insane. You do not want to live when you get a splinter in your finger and die. You don't want to live in those times. And as soon as the internet happened and I first got on it, was ARPANET then. That was back in the 80s or 70s. I immediately went, I don't want to live in the time before computers.
Oh, really? Yes. I
As soon as
amen to that.
I was on ARPANET and got my first email address, I was like, I never want to live without this. This is the best thing ever. Right?
And it's bringing people together. I mean, it's not only bringing people together, because it also serves to create communities that are shutting um, their borders and not talking to each other, but still we have these opportunities. And the fact that you are sitting in Tbilisi, Georgia, I'm sitting in Lviv, Ukraine, we have people on the stream watching from Turkey, from Germany, from Ukraine, from all over the world, and we are all here for a good cause, but also because of our passion for this art form of role-playing games is a miracle in itself.
It really is. And you know what? There's so much bad that comes with social media, and we are being so easily manipulated by dark forces. There's lots and lots of bad, but would you want to give up all the good shit?
No,
No.
I have a pet theory about
No,
this.
no, you wouldn't. Go
It's
ahead.
like I have a pet theory that there will come a time, maybe next generation, maybe a generation after that, when we figure this out, and we figure out the proper dosage of social media and proper dosage of interactive entertainment like video games or gambling, because uh, the by the analogy that humanity has lived with drinking alcohol and smoking tobacco for centuries, and it was abusing it and it was unhealthy. But as we grew more reasonable, we are now understanding the dangers, putting limits on, and then it's more and more controlled and more
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
less and less
And you know
harmful.
what?
And this way,
You lose a little bit of freedom, but would a law that says that no one's allowed in any one year to gamble away more than 10% of their net worth, is that really such a bad law?
I would support that.
I would support it, right? Like, that's a good law. And a law, it would limit freedom, but it said that, social media is regulated by the government the same way newspapers and TV stations were regulated. Like in America, it used to be that no one company could own more than one TV station in each city, and no more than one company could own more than one newspaper
Yeah,
because there used to be more than one newspaper in every city.
and
And those kind of laws are common sense, and we're gonna get to that eventually. But we're in a rail baron era of crony capitalism, and eventually people are going to get smart. They're going to stop playing by tribal politics, and the people who are the majority of the population, the 70% who are not wealthy, are going to realize, oh, we're in charge. Yes, you are, folks. Yes, you are. You're in charge. And you can do whatever you want, and they can't stop you.
someone in the chat is asking an interesting question: what's to keep someone in power from making such laws that control the social media, from abusing that power? And that's a question I don't have the answer to personally.
I mean, they will try, and they will certainly pass those laws. And then what you have is you have a situation like they had in France, where the government says we're going to take away your retirement rights. Which, by the way, I kind of agree. Like we live way older than we used to live. They have to change retirement, even though it affects me. I'm about to be retirement age myself. I don't want them to. I want 65. Hell, I want 60, like in France. That sounds great, right? But I care more about society than I do about myself. So I understand. But anyway, if they try to manipulate the system, then the people have to rise up and go, fuck you.
Yep, that's
And,
similar
that's
to
all.
what we did twice on
And they
Maidan
done.
Square.
And yes, I was there. Fuck yeah, man. Ukraine said, fuck you, fuck Russia, fuck Putin. You're trying to put your stooge in here and you're trying to take away our last hope for freedom. And fuck you. And Ukraine somehow freed itself. Amazing how that works out. People can rise up and make themselves free. That actually works. Yes, folks, it does. It can happen in Turkey. It can happen in Ukraine. It can happen in Georgia. It can happen anywhere. You can decide that you are free. And by deciding, you can make it happen. It happens in many places around the world that you don't even hear of, but it happens.
And it
And you
gives
do
us
it
hope.
non-violently, by the way. The key is non-violently, because if you do it violently, then you're just like them. But if you allow yourself to be slaughtered, if you allow yourself to be shot at, if you continue on peacefully, you have this nobility to you that eventually the existing democracies, as long as they exist, they don't exist, fuck all this. But as long as other democracies exist and the powers in the world, and they are, then eventually they will come to your side. They will come to your aid. They will. Because they'll be forced to by their citizens. They're going, why the fuck are we helping these people fighting for their freedom? You know? And so that's why anyone who argues, oh, why are we helping Ukraine? We're endangering the world. It's like you don't get history. You're an idiot and you're probably a quasi-fascist. So, you know, like, of course you help people fighting for their freedom. Of course you do. It's 101 of democracy. If you don't help other people be free, then how can you be free?
And we appreciate this help and support very much, both from the United States and from Georgia. Whatever comes, whatever aid comes, or whatever volunteers help us, it's very appreciated. There are several more interesting questions in the chat, but we are out of time, and I'm sorry I cannot ask all of them. So I will just say that it was a pleasure, Mark, to talk to you. If you could, before we part, remind us again the names of the projects you're working on again, because it's
Go to
hard to hear
Mossborn.
from the first go.
Yeah, it's Fang Night, and the way you sign up for the playtest and get a free, full color, fully illustrated playtest PDF is go to Lost Lorn Games, Lost Lorn LORN Games GAMES.com, and right on the top right, you're gonna see a thing. You just put your email in there, and in a couple of days, we're sending a new PDF Monday. So sign up. I really need feedback. I believe 100% in playtesting. I am a collaborative person. Lost Lorna is based on the tail spinners input. We have a huge team, and I want everyone's input. I want to hear everyone's ideas on what makes a good game. We're totally open. So please join the team, be a playtester at the very least. Thank you.
Thank you for joining our festival. Thank you for speaking to us. It was a real pleasure having you.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!